Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today it is my video taking a look back at this past weekend of the Overwatch League, week 7, or the second week of the June Joust qualifiers. Let's real quick throw up my picks so you can see how I did this past weekend. Pretty good overall, 11-1 is the score, one game wrong, but unfortunately it was a big pick match, so my perfect big pick record has been destroyed. It is over. It has ended. No more perfection for me there, but hey, everything else we did fine. So, who really cares? So let's jump in real quick and just start talking about some of these matches. I'll give you my thoughts on them, let you know what I think, what I feel about some of these teams, and then we will go from there. Starting with Friday, we had the London Spitfire and the Dallas Fuel, and of course the LA Gladiators taking on the Vancouver Titans. Both of these matches are really just not all that interesting. The Spitfire and the Titans are the two worst teams in North America right now. Both are winless. Both remain winless through this weekend. And it just looks like two teams that just have no real direction. The Spitfire, I think the Titans look worse right now. And I'm sure some of that is like they have a new main tank and they just had a player retire. So they're going to have to kind of take some time to really get this roster gelling going forward. But these two teams, the Spitfire and the Titans, just do not, they're not fun to watch. Like, the matches they play are so forgettable, and they're just not entertaining, right? So when you have a team like the Fuel and the Gladiators, who are good teams, really good teams, these are good teams, and arguably one of the best teams in the league is the Dallas Fuel. They're winning these matches 3-0, you don't learn anything, right? Like, the Fuel beat this team 3-0, cool, well, they should have won 3-0. The Gladiators win 3-0, cool. They should have won 3-0. They're a good team. They're a better team than their opponent, and it's not even close. So it really was not a match that taught us much. So Friday was not really that big of a day in terms of matches, so I'm just going to say it was a Kapui day, and we're going to move on to Saturday, where some of the matches actually had some oomph and some bite. So the APAC matches in Saturday, the first one was the Shanghai Dragons taking on the LA Valiant. An interesting one. This one we did get to see Who Are You make his debut for the Shanghai Dragons. Obviously, they signed him last week. I don't even remember. I think it was Tuesday, like Tuesday morning, like midnight, is when they signed him of last week. So not a ton of time to prepare to play for this team, but they bring him in on control. They dominate. They also had Molly play the entire match, which I thought was pretty good and pretty cool to see. Molly is a player who I loved last season on Chengdu. I've talked about him a lot in other videos. Once again, this is the type of match where it's not really it's a good team and it's a bad team, but they actually drew on Volskaya, which is interesting, but that's about all there is to make note of for the LA Valiant. They didn't do anything other than that. It was a very one-sided series. Like I said, it was nice to see Molly play, but they didn't really do much. What's interesting about this, and this is a trend that we did also see in other APAC matches, we saw it continuing with the NYXL versus Seoul Dynasty match, and then also again on Sunday, is that whereas last week Asia was really determined to run double bubble and dive tank, Diva Winston compositions, they were running a lot of double shield this week. They were running a lot of Orisa Sigma comps. You had the Seoul Dynasty pulling out the Sigma Roadhog or the Zarya Roadhog compositions. Like, those compositions were getting run in Asia when they were not being run last week. Last week it was all double bubble, all dive. But this week they were starting to run some double shield, which is interesting. So is that the better comp? I'm not sure. And the reason why I'm not sure is because NA was also running a lot of double bubble, not double shield. They were running a lot of double bubble and dive compositions. Now, there was some teams like the Atlanta Reign that weren't running that very much, but it was a really weird week because things just kind of flip-flopped, and I didn't really expect it to do it. So it was an interesting thing to see when double shield, which was so dominant in NA last week, just wasn't really as big this week in NA across the board as I expected it to be. I thought we'd see it pretty much everywhere, and we really didn't. So That was interesting to me. But Shanghai versus LA Valiant, that's really all there is to make note of that one. So let's just quickly go over NYXL versus Seoul Dynasty. I haven't watched this series in and of itself, but the trend I'm noticing with New York is they are very, very good at Junkertown. They have won Junkertown. They beat Guangzhou in Junkertown. They beat Seoul in Junkertown. It's the only map they won in both of those series. When they can put in Gwangbong and Ivy in that map, they just seem to play better. And it might just be because of the map itself, which usually it tends to be that. But I think that's a noticeable trend. I don't think Flora's playing poorly. I don't think Feather's playing poorly. But Gwangbong and Ivy are winning every time they put them in on Junkertown. So I don't really know what is going on with this team. Seoul Dynasty, they're such a weird team. I really don't know what to make of them, honestly, because they loved running the double shield. They were the big team running double shield. New York continued running a lot of that Winston Diva, that dive tanks. They were the team that really wanted to kind of force that type of stuff, but the Dynasty ran a lot of weird, like Sigma-based, or not Sigma-based, Hog-based compositions, which I don't think is the meta. They're the only team that's really running those things consistently, and I don't think it's that good, so I don't really know why they're running it, but we'll see what happens when they go up against some other good teams. Like, this is a team that should be good at double shield. It's what they did very well on last season. Marvel's a very good Sigma. Gesture's a very good Orisa, but they keep wanting to run the Hog. And so, considering they're the only team really running it, I mean, they were one of the teams in the playoffs last year that was doing really, really well running the Sigma and the Roadhog. So, who knows? It's a weird team composition to see, but they get the win over New York. To be expected, I think, but New York did push them decently well, so that is something to look at and highlight, because it was not just this roll like what we have seen in the past. It was a 3-1. It was a pretty close series. You know, Hollywood went into overtime, so it was not a bad series from everything I have seen from it. But I didn't really watch that series, so let's go to some games that I did watch. Houston Outlaws took on the London Spitfire. This one I did watch, but I didn't need to, because once again, London don't look very good. They have very little motivation. They have Sparker coming of age soon, I believe June 10th. They've played all their matches for the June Joust, so he won't be eligible until the Summer Showdown. He wouldn't have been eligible in the Summer Showdown anyway, because, you know, June 10th is after the... that's when you get into, like, right before the qualifiers, so, or the actual tournament itself. So unless they had made that, they wouldn't have had him. So they do have that to look forward to, but Houston are just a good team, and I think this is the really good week for Houston. I really thought that they came up big this week. I think that Houston really showed themselves to be on that echelon of elite level teams, right? They had the loss last week to Atlanta. They came out and they beat Florida. They came out, they looked consistent again this week. They looked dominant again this week. They look like a good team, and I think that that's a really good thing to see from them. I think there were a lot of question marks about the Houston Outlaws team, how they would look in this new meta, obviously bringing in a new main tank. Big question mark around whether or not they were going to be that kind of 1 month gods and then kind of drop off, like what we've seen with Washington. Would Houston have that same fate? And it seems that the answer to that question is no. They look like they are legit, and they look like they are still going to compete. I think there is genuinely, I don't know why I said that so weird. There's genuinely a question around whether or not this main support thing that they're doing is good or not and works or not, because obviously they keep switching between Jake and Juby. Juby's their dedicated main support. He plays their Lucio, but then Brig and Mercy, they kind of switch between them, and it's a little odd. So I am going to keep my eye out on that, but as it stands right now, actually, I think this is a good team. I think they have really shown a lot of solid performances, and so I would say that this is a very, very, very good performance from them, getting a win over a Spitfire team that, yes, are not very good, but hey, a dominant win is good no matter what. The next match was the San Francisco Shock taking on the Toronto Defiant. The Shock come out, make their return. I think there were a lot of questions of whether or not this team would look good, since they've been, they haven't been playing in a while and didn't play last week, so we hadn't seen them since their loss to the Dallas Fuel in the main Melee qualifiers, so how would they look? And the answer is they looked pretty dang good. They ran double shield, which is what I expected them to run, but it wasn't the only thing they ran, which is something that I found very interesting. They ran double shield for the first two maps of the series, but then on map 3, which was Hanamura, they ran the Winston Diva. Now I think that might just be a map-based comp, because then when you get to map 4, which was Hollywood, they went back to the double shield. But I think they look really good in double shield, and that's the composition I would expect them to run. I thought the Shock looked very good. I think that this is a really good thing for them. We have that consistency in main support, which is really, really good. That's helpful. That is helpful for a team that has kind of struggled a bit. Did I say main support? Main tank. You're going to play Smurf all the time, and that really helps this team out. The support line, they did some switching. I don't remember if it was this series as well as their series against the Dallas Fuel, or just in the series against the Dallas Fuel, but they did kind of do something where they would run Violet on Brig, Twilight on Ana, and then if they needed the Lucio, basically that was what FD God did. We saw Violet play Mercy at times. It seems like if they want to play Ana, they're going to automatically bring Twilight in, and that's what they will figure out from there, right? They feel confident enough running Violet on the Brig and the Mercy that if they want to run Brig Ana or Mercy Ana, they will run Violet and Twilight. And if they want to run Bap Zen, or not Bap Zen, Bap Ana, presumably they would run them as well. But if they wanted to run Bap and Lucio, they're going to run an FD God. So it's an interesting team to look at. They looked pretty good in this match, but the player that I was really surprised by, the one I want to shout out, is Aspire for the Toronto Defiant. For those of you who don't know, you may say, who is Aspire? I didn't watch this past weekend. I have no idea who you're talking about. Aspire was a player that the Toronto Defiant added to this team because of the COVID outbreak that has kind of happened in this team. A couple of players are sick, and so they needed a hit scan player to fill in for this team, and they signed Aspire, who was a Contenders player. I believe he was on... I don't remember what team he was playing on. This is embarrassing. I will tell you in a second what team he was playing on. He was playing on American Tornado, actually, for a very, very, very short amount of time. But before that, his main time was spent on Dark Mode NA. That's the main team that he spent his time on. And so this is a player who looked really, really good in this week. The entire week, he actually looked really, really good. And I think that it was one of the most impressive performances I've seen. Comes in short notice, comes on this team, and just dominated. He dominated both matches that he played in. So huge shout out to Aspire. Definitely deserving of being on an Overwatch League roster. Toronto Defiant or not, there's teams like the Vancouver Titans who can maybe say, hey, we need a new hit scan player or another hit scan player, because maybe it helps their team out, get a little bit of a boost. Some other teams as well that may be looking at him potentially for that need of a hit scan player. There's not that many teams that I can think of that would benefit from hiring a Western hit scan player. It is one of the kind of big issues that arise. But he was very, very good, and I think he definitely performed very, very well. Let's talk about the big pick, Atlanta Reign versus LA Gladiators, where I made a fool of myself, and I picked the wrong team to win this one. It went the way of the LA Gladiators instead of the Atlanta Reign, but I think this is a thing that is good. I'm wrong, and I'm fine with being wrong. I don't have to be right all the time. I don't feel like I am... I feel like this is actually one where I'm wrong, but I feel pretty good about it, because it shows us that the LA Gladiators are finally hitting that stride that we thought they were going to have at the beginning of the season. A lot of people thought the LA Gladiators were going to be one of the best teams in North America and one of the best teams in the Overwatch League in general. And I think that they still definitely have the potential to be one of those top-level teams. They still look really good. Like, they still look like a solid top-level team. But it is definitely not the start to the season that they wanted. But they come up big win against the Atlanta Reign. Good opening weekend for the Gladiators. Really kind of show that they are a good team. Now, they haven't had a sustained performance of success. I don't know why I said it that way. They haven't had a win yet against a really top-level team, right? A team like the Mayhem, the Shock, the Fuel. Now, next week, they do have a bit of a challenge. They play the Boston Uprising, which the Boston Uprising look really good right now, as well as the Paris Eternal. So if they can win both of those games, as two teams that actually have been playing pretty well recently, that would be a really good look for the LA Gladiators, and that would be something that I think would really benefit this Gladiators team. But I don't think the Atlanta Reign necessarily played poorly. I think the Gladiators just looked better, and I think that there is a ton of credit to be given to the Gladiators. They know what they're doing now. Skewed played incredibly this week. Against the Vancouver Titans, he just took over matches when he played Brig. His Brig is absurd. I love when they play Birdring and Kevster. I think those two together, very, very good. It is the best composition that they have when they play those two, no matter what heroes they're on, really. They look really good, and I think the Gladiators are going to figure things out. They've had some time off, and they look much improved from that time off. And so good on the Gladiators getting that big win. Definitely something that they have been looking for, and this is a big one for them. So that concludes Saturday's matches. Sunday opened up with the NYXL speed running the LA Valiant. Now, this is actually a pretty important match for the NYXL, right? They beat the Fusion, they lose to Guangzhou, lose to Seoul. They need to kind of start righting the ship, correcting course, getting a big win. The LA Valiant, not a very good team. If you're the NYXL, you know you can beat this team, and the NYXL did not even hesitate. Seoul Dynasty had a draw against the LA Valiant. The NYXL set the second fastest match time ever. They speed ran this Valiant team. It wasn't even close to a competitive match. And that's a good sign for the NYXL. Good teams should beat bad teams, right? I'm not going to mince any words. The LA Valiant are a bad team. They have not looked good all season. The NYXL know they don't look good, so the NYXL took advantage of that and completely just embarrassed the LA Valiant. Completely stomped them. And that to me bodes well for this team for the future. They still have a shot at making the June Joust qualifiers. It's a pretty outside shot. They need a lot of things to go their way. They need a lot of matches to go certain ways. 2-2 does not guarantee them anything. And their differential is only +1, so it's not great for them. But they could still make the qualifiers. And I think if they have that time off and they do make the qualifiers, they could be a bit of a threat to a team like the Hangzhou Spark or the Shanghai Dragons if New York kind of gets things together. So good win from them, obviously. It's not the toughest opponent, but a win like that is always good, and that helps you build momentum going into the Summer Showdown. So even if they don't make the June Joust qualifiers, that is a good way to kind of build momentum going into the Summer Showdown, which I actually think is a pretty good time for this team because I don't think they have the toughest of schedules. And so I think that this is a New York team that really is looking like they're finally getting things together. I think a little bit more time and we can see this team realize their potential. Final APAC match for the week was the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Shanghai Dragons, which was a very ugly match from the Seoul Dynasty because they keep running these Winston comps. All right. I understand if you want to run Marvel in double shield compositions as your Sigma, because he looks really good in Sigma. And when they won in Temple of Anubis, I would argue it's because Marvel Sigma was really, really good. But why do you keep running these Hog Zarya comps with Marvel in? Stop! I don't like it. Put Tuyu in. I don't like these comps that the Seoul Dynasty are running. I don't think these comps are going to win them a tournament. Like Shanghai beat them. I think Hangzhou would beat them if they were running those comps. Stop. Run double shield, please. You look good on double shield. Marvel's a really good Sigma. I don't think Hog is the answer. Stop running it. Now, maybe they were expecting a lot more Winston to be run, which if Winston Diva was being run, then definitely I think that Hog and Sigma would actually be a much better composition because, Winston dives and you just grab him and stun him and you just kind of kill him. But with double shield, it doesn't really work as well. So I think it was a weird composition. Shanghai looked pretty good. They did everything they had to do to kind of be clean and clinical and take a win. And so good on the Shanghai Dragons. Big win for them, of course. They lock a spot in the June Joust qualifiers for the APAC region. So we know they'll be competing to get in. And I right now would say they are probably the favorite coming out of APAC alongside the Hangzhou Spark to make that jump into the qualifiers. Moving to NA, Toronto Defiant took on the Houston Outlaws. The Toronto Defiant, a very rough month for them, going 1-3. They fall to the Houston Outlaws. Obviously, not having Hisu hurts this team a lot, but I don't think that is the reason why they lost. I think this is really just them playing teams that are better than them. They wouldn't have beaten, in my opinion, the Shock or the Outlaws if they had Hisu and if they had Logics. Like, this to me was a week and a month where we saw the Defiant for who they are. They're a middle of the pack team, right? They're good. They're not great. They can beat teams that are okay and bad, but they're not going to beat your best teams, right? They lost to the Mayhem last month. They lost to the Justice last month, who I think the Justice are struggling a lot. Like, they just don't look that great. And so I think this is, to me, is a wake-up call, right? Like, you have to realize for the Defiant, like, you have to invest more in getting some more players if you want to be good. This DPS lineup isn't it, and this tank lineup honestly isn't it either. I think Sato's playing fine, and Michelle's playing fine, but they just don't have that gear that I think can compete with the best in the region. And, like, Houston kind of, other than the one map that the Defiant took, which I believe was Control, the Outlaws just looked better, consistently better. And so for me, I really just think that the Defiant don't look all that great right now. And I think it's really just the team showing themselves for who they really are. And so right now, I think that they really are just the middle of the pack team. And the Outlaws look to be genuinely and truly an elite team. And they, I believe, will be competing for a spot in that May Melee qualifier. They have guaranteed themselves a spot in the knockout bracket. I am just not with it today. Next match was the Vancouver Titans taking on the Atlanta Reign. Guess what? This is the third fastest Overwatch League match of all time, just behind the NYXL versus LA Valiant match from earlier the same day. Wow! Who would have seen this coming? Like I said, Valiant. Vancouver Titans, nothing just going their way. They just don't look very good. Atlanta Reign, hey, they come out, they dominate, they want to do well. Bouncing back from that LA Gladiators loss, good win for them. But the Titans are just bad. They are just plain bad. They don't look like they have any fire, any energy. They got speed ran, and it is just going to be miserable. I feel bad for the Canadian fans. They are never getting those breadsticks, baby. They are not having any of them. No breadsticks for the Vancouver Titans. No breadsticks for the Vancouver fans. Just breadsticks for Atlanta Reign because they got that bread in this game. It was not pretty. Final match of the week was my second and final big pick of the week, and it was the Dallas Fuel taking on the San Francisco Shock. Shock get the win 3-1. It was a 5-mapper. They drew on the Assault map, which I believe... No, they drew... Yeah, the Assault map. Hybrid. No, Temple of Anubis. I'm just not with it today. What is going on? They drew on Temple of Anubis, and it was the hybrid map that the Dallas Fuel won. That's where my mind is at. And this, to me, was an interesting match. I predicted that this would be a match where the San Francisco Shock tried to force double shield as much as possible. But ultimately, what ended up happening is the Shock just ran the double bubble and the dive composition. Like, they ran the composition that, in theory, would be the best composition for the Dallas Fuel. Right? Like, this would be the best composition for the Dallas Fuel, right? And the Shock kind of just had their way with the Dallas Fuel. I think some of it comes down to the fact that the Fuel don't have a strong hit scan player. We saw them have to play Soldier 76. Pine's not with this team yet, so he can't play yet. And so Echo could just kind of do whatever he wanted. Nero could just do whatever he wanted. Glister played really, really well. I don't know why he was sitting on the bench. When he played, he looked really good and really dominant. And I think that this is a really good win for the Shock. In my power rankings, I had them at 5. I knew they were still a good team. I knew they would win this game. I was super confident they would win this game. I still made it a big pick because that was the best game of the week, biggest game of the week. And I just thought the Shock looked really good. And this is a meta that really works for them. I don't think this is a great hero pool for the Dallas Fuel. I really think that despite the talent they have, they're not going to get those compositional matchups that they want all stage. Look, I don't know if Double Shield or the Dive Tanks Double Bubble is going to be the composition going forward, because it seems to flip-flop depending on the region, right? Like, NA seemed to actually run a lot more Double Bubble and Dive Tanks this week than they did last week. But you have to be able to run Double Shield. That's just the nature of it. If you can't run Double Shield, you're not going to find success, and I don't think that Dallas Fuel can reliably run Double Shield. And so I think that this is going to be a tough month for them, and I think the Shock just look better right now. Next week is a good week. Homestands are back in Asia. Hangzhou Spark homestand will be happening. So watch the APAC games if you want some crowd noise. You want to see some fans in attendance of some games. I think there's only 2 games that are actually like the 2 teams are in person. I think Hangzhou plays Chengdu and the LA Valiant. But the Fusion and the Dynasty also play. So there's only a couple of matches next week that are actually between 2 teams that will be on stage together. But just having crowd noise in general will be really cool and really fun. So I'm excited to see that again. I will probably just watch them when I wake up in the morning, but it'll be nice to see. So I'm excited for that. That's it for this week. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more like it in the future. Comment down below your thoughts on anything that happened this past week. And until next time, bye-bye.